English Planet. Appunti di inglese, a cura di Nicholas Youldon.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to English Planet, the program that shares radio dreamland vision and teaches English with a smile. This is the voice of Nick Youldon, probably the only eco-spiritual English teacher in the whole of Italy. I believe that using English can help people to communicate better and therefore help the planet. And by the way, if any of your pets are listening, cats or dogs, maybe they would like to listen in and learn some English too. Can I hear someone barking, or am I barking mad? Look that one up in your dictionary, students. In the last lesson, I was looking at how individual words function in the English language. This week, I'd like to continue a little on that idea and look at some more examples of words and how they function, and how words have to go into a particular sequence to convey meaning without causing confusion. As I said last lesson, words function in a different manner depending on how you use them and, importantly, where you put them in your sentence. Let's look at a simple sentence. There is a car race in London this afternoon. Repeat, there is a car race in London this afternoon. Now, what have we here? Let's look. First, there is. There is, in Italian, c'è. Is an article, an indefinite article, una. Car race, car race, car, automobile, race, corsa. In London, ok, tutto chiaro. This afternoon, questo pomeriggio, no problem. There is a car race in London this afternoon. Now, this sentence includes two nouns, car and race. So what am I talking about? What am I communicating? Well, I'm communicating information about a race, una corsa. A Londra, questo pomeriggio. In London, this afternoon. So you have some information, a race in London, but you need more. A race involving what? Well, the answer is already there. A race involving cars. A car race. How do you know that I'm talking about a race for cars and not a car for races? Because car is before race in my sentence. Therefore, the race is the important focus. The car is a description of the race and therefore an adjective. So I can only be talking about a race for cars. Una corsa per le macchine. Now, what if I make some changes and I say, there is a race car in London this afternoon. Repeat, there is a race car in London this afternoon. Am I creating confusion? No, I am not. Now I am talking about a particular car which is in London this afternoon. What kind of car? What type of car? Description of car? A race car. This is probably much less interesting to people listening to me because one car in London out of millions of cars, different cars of all kinds, is going to be difficult to find and of very little interest probably. There is obviously no race involved, or not necessarily a race involved. There is simply a race car. Now, this is just a simple example of what happens and which may happen on numerous millions and possibly many millions of other occasions, making a same combination of two nouns. In order to avoid confusion, the sequence of the words must always be observed. Now you have a concept. Let's go back for a moment to our extra classroom, the most familiar place for everyone in England, the pub. I know they're all closed now for COVID, but eventually they will reopen. Well, let's look at some of the familiar problems that Julius Caesar had when he visited the ancient pubs of London when he arrived. When he was a young lad, Julius Caesar was an assiduous student of English in the Scuola Media in Rome. He learned good English, so when he arrived in the pub, he was sure of himself. He sat down at a table, called the barmaid, and said, "Can I have a beer glass, please?" Unfortunately, he spoke with a very strong Roman accent, but that was not the big problem. What he received from the barmaid was an empty glass, which may be used for putting beer inside it, but the glass was empty, no beer. What was Julius's mistake? Well, the mistake was that he put the words in the wrong sequence. If you ask for a beer glass, you are effectively asking for a glass. You are not asking for a drink. If you want to drink something, you have to ask for a drink and say, "Can I have a glass of beer, please?" Nothing really changes if we talk about a glass or a bottle. It's indifferent. You can ask for a glass of beer or a bottle of beer. You can ask for a beer glass or a glass of beer. You can also ask for a glass of wine, a bottle of wine, a jug of milk. No, I don't like milk. It's okay if it's a glass of soya milk. A cup of tea, a cup of coffee. So you see, you can get almost anything you want, but only if you put the words in the correct sequence. Julius Caesar left England very, very quickly because he could never get anything to drink except rainwater. Remember that in English the sequence of the words is always important. If we say something like, "John loves Mary," repeat, "John loves Mary," or even "John likes Mary." Repeat, "John likes Mary." All we know is that John is the subject of this sentence, or the active person in this sentence, and Mary is the object of the sentence, or the passive part of the sentence. We only know about the sentiments of John. We know nothing about the sentiments of Mary. John loves Mary. If we want to know something about Mary, then we have to put Mary at the beginning of our sentence. For example, Mary loves John. Mary likes John. Mary doesn't love John at all. Or Mary loves Henry. That's an absolute disaster. In many situations, this is important for communication. If the first thing I say is John, then people who are interested in John, all those millions of people who are interested in John, will continue to listen to me because they want information about John. Even if I pause for a long time, John loves Mary, you know. People will continue to listen to me because they know I'm talking about John. They know I will say something about John. I have information about John. He is the subject of my sentence. If I say something like apples, all those people who are interested in apples will continue to listen to me and will wait for a verb and some activities or more information, such as apples come from or apples grow on trees. This is a basic simple sentence with a simple structure, but the sequence must be maintained. If I do that, then I can add more complex information to my words. For example, those large, green, juicy, expensive apples in the supermarket come from Belgium. People listening to me here will understand that large, green, juicy, expensive are all adjectives. Adjectives precede a noun. What is the noun? Those large, green, juicy, expensive apples. Apples is my noun. Okay. What's the verb? Those large, green, juicy, expensive apples come from. Come from is a verb. They come from. Where do they come from? They come from Belgium. So I have a sentence which includes a lot of words, but it's clearly organized and follows the regulations: subject, including adjectives, verb, and object. I have no problem with communication, and people have no problem understanding me. If you follow the basic rule of word order, it's possible, for example, to put large numbers of adjectives together with a noun to describe things. For example, where is your father? Can you see that tall, thin, elegant, well-dressed, bearded man in the street? That's my father. Here we use 5 adjectives, all to describe the same person, to make it absolutely clear which person we are describing, which person we are considering, so that communication is complete. Probably it's not necessary for all of these adjectives to be used, but if we want to be complete, we can use them. But all the adjectives come before the word they are describing. Tall, thin, elegant, well-dressed, bearded, man. Or, if we want to be politically correct, person, not man. In any case, the number of words is not important and does not create confusion because they are all classed as adjectives and they are all in the correct position in the sentence. Remember, of course, that in English a sentence must include a minimum of a subject and a verb. I am is a sentence. I eat is a sentence. I eat bananas is a longer sentence, but it's still a sentence. The tall, thin, elegant, well-dressed, bearded man in the street is not a sentence. There is no verb. This is only a phrase and will tell us nothing unless we include a verb to complete our sentence. This phrase alone has no meaning. If we add something, then it acquires meaning. The tall, thin, elegant, well-dressed, bearded man in the street is crossing the road to buy a newspaper is now a complete sentence because we have a subject, a verb, and an object. Therefore, we have an interesting communication. So, remember the golden rule if you want to understand and be understood. The golden rule is subject, verb, object. An apple fell on Sir Isaac Newton's head. That's why we understand gravity and why England began to build free hospitals. And of course, if we want to ask a stupid question, we have to invert our sequence. Not subject, verb, object, but verb, subject, object. Example: did Sir Isaac Newton's head fall on the apple? No, the apple fell on Sir Isaac Newton's head. Right, that's the end of this evening's lesson, as it were. We're going to have a short break now for some advertising, and then I'll be back for another 15 minutes or so of chatting in English. We'll be right back. Stay tuned to Radio Dreamland.
Meditazione planetaria del martedì. Radio Dreamland si unisce all'iniziativa della meditazione planetaria del martedì sera, organizzata dal New Earth Circle. Ogni martedì sera, alle 21, vi invitiamo a partecipare alla meditazione planetaria dedicata a Madre Terra e a tutti i suoi figli di qualsiasi specie. Ognuno può unirsi al cerchio planetario dei meditanti partecipando da soli o con i propri cari, per una testimonianza di pace e di spiritualità che abbracci tutto il pianeta, per un atto d'amore verso Madre Terra, per un mondo antispecista. Unitevi con noi in meditazione, seguendo la Nassinar, la musica del vuoto eseguita al flauto da Giancarlo Barbadoro. Ogni martedì alle 21. Per informazioni www.newearthcircle.org. Radio Dreamland. Share the vision.
Okay, here we are back again in the studios of Radio Dreamland. And now I have a few moments to tell you something about, or have a little chat about, let's say, tales of mystery and imagination. Pay attention and listen carefully, because this is obviously all in English. And this evening I want to tell you something about a strange occurrence, something strange which I've experienced in my life over the last couple of weeks. With Christmas, the solstice, New Year, Befana, Epiphany, not to mention COVID, etc. There was a long period with very little to do. You couldn't go shopping, you couldn't go out, you couldn't go to work, you couldn't go here, you can't go there. So I watched a film on television. The film I watched had the English title The Shipping News. It's quite an old film, known in Italian as Ombre dal Profondo. Was directed by Lasse Hallström, a Swedish director who has made a number of quite interesting films. I enjoyed the film for the actors, the acting, the story, the atmosphere, etc. But particularly because of the scenery and the location. It was filmed on a very large island off the coast of Canada, in the Atlantic Ocean, a piece of land which is known as Newfoundland. This is geographically part of North America, but not the United States, Canada. The film, I believed it was American, but in reality it was a joint work by Sweden because of Hallström, America with money and some of the actors, and Canada with the locations and some finance. But as I say, the film didn't generally give the feeling of being an American film. The scenery was extremely European, reminiscent of the coast of Ireland, Cornwall, Brittany, for example, in Europe. And many of the actors were English, in effect, or Welsh indeed. If you look at Google Maps and see if you can travel west from Great Britain, from Ireland maybe, or Cornwall, and travel west in a straight line, the first land you will encounter or meet after approximately 3,000 kilometers is Newfoundland. So this film, as I was watching it, was giving me more and more the feeling of being at home, my original birthplace in the west of England. So the film stimulated in some way my spirit of interior curiosity, in particular about Newfoundland. I wanted to know where it was. Was it in Canada? Was it in America, the United States? I went to have a look, and I looked on Google Maps to see exactly where it was. But as I was looking at the maps and the information about Newfoundland, one particular thing struck me. I saw on the map the name of Avalon. Newfoundland already is in the middle almost of the Atlantic Ocean. On the east side of this island, even more into the Atlantic Ocean, is a part of this island and a peninsula which is still attached, which has the name of Avalon. Now, I said to myself, what's this? I said, Avalon is a legendary island connected with stories of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. It is the island where the body of King Arthur was taken to rest in peace, as it were, in all of the ancient legends in Britain. I think now most of the world, the population of the world, knows the name of Avalon and knows its association with the legend of King Arthur, probably. So I said to myself, why did this island in Newfoundland get the name of Avalon? I also found the answer to my question. In 1623, this large island was actually the private property of a very rich English businessman. His name was Calvert. This gentleman Calvert was given actually a royal charter, that being a concessione del re, a royal charter giving him the permission to use the name of Avalon for his land. The reason that King Charles gave this royal charter to Calvert is literally quoted as follows: "In imitation of old Avalon in Somersetshire, wherein Glastonbury stands, the first fruits of Christianity in Britain, as the other was in that party of America." So the King of England allowed Calvert to use the name Avalon, 3,000 kilometers away from Britain, in memory, more or less, as a kind of symbol of Christianity. Calvert himself was a Roman Catholic. He was escaping from persecution by Protestants in Britain, and he wanted to form a kind of colony sanctuary for other Roman Catholics fleeing from persecution in Europe. Now, superficially, this seems rather curious to me in particular. The name of Avalon has no symbolic meaning or any importance within the Catholic or any Christian religion. It's a name which comes from a legendary King Arthur, possibly, who did exist or who didn't exist, but it has no religious significance. The second part is that here we are also nominating the town of Glastonbury. Now, this is also curious for me in particular, for which I will explain in one moment. But Glastonbury, what is particularly important about Glastonbury? Why should the King of England want Glastonbury to be remembered in America? I personally am not religious, and I am not a member of the Roman Catholic faith, and I don't follow any religions, but I am personally happy that the name of Avalon and for personal reasons also the name of Glastonbury should be remembered around the world. It seems a little bit unfortunate, but it is convenient that maybe the Roman Catholics have used these names for their own purpose, but I know very well personally that they have a significance which goes beyond the interests of any religion or church. So let me focus for a little on these two components, Avalon and Glastonbury. First, Avalon. Avalon belongs not to any Christian or religious organization, but belongs to the history of Celtic peoples of Europe. It only exists within or with reference to the story, the legend, or the history, whichever you wish, of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. This story has been documented officially from like 1100 in Britain by writers writing in the Latin language, but official historians. That means that for 900 years approximately, the story has been carried on in our, let's say, modern majoritarian society as a kind of romantic tale. But correctly, it is part of history which belongs to the Celtic peoples and which is carried on by Druidic traditions, by the Druids, who still exist and are still important in Celtic societies. More evident maybe than the more evidently Celtic societies of Western Britain, Ireland, Wales, Cornwall, and also the Bretons in Brittany. In fact, the name Avalon is derived from the words in the languages of Ireland, Wales, Cornwall, and Brittany, from the word aval or afal, which basically translates into something like apple or fruit tree. And it would seem that even before the Christian religion started, previous writers from Greece or from Rome referred to a land of fruit trees, which probably existed in the west of Europe. Somewhere in the northwest of Europe, somewhere in the region which we now know as Britain or Brittany. Now let's focus a little on the town of Glastonbury. Glastonbury is actually a very small village, population approximately 9,000 people, situated in Somerset. It's a place which I know because I was born and brought up about 50 kilometers away from this town, and I have visited many times. And I can say from personal experience that it is a very unusual, let's say, place. It's a place where you feel something different. You have a good feeling when you're in Glastonbury. In fact, it attracts thousands and thousands of people every year, except in years of COVID, for an amazing concert with pop music groups from all over the world. It's on the level of Woodstock, but it's been continuing for I don't know, decades every year, with thousands of visitors in the summer. Glastonbury is considered the centre of or in connection with Avalon because in Glastonbury there is a very large hill. It looks like a pyramid. It may be a pyramid, but it is isolated by surrounding land which is very flat and very low, almost at sea level for 4 kilometers and kilometers. So if you can imagine the films or the books of King Arthur and Avalon, you can imagine this area where King Arthur would die in his final battle and be carried across the sea to this magical island of Avalon, where his body would lie or would live on in eternity. So Glastonbury is centrally connected to the legend, to the story of King Arthur, to Celtic legends and Celtic traditions, Druid traditions. As explanation, I will quote from a different source. The Druids utilized the Tor, that is this pyramid in Glastonbury, from 2500 before Christ, as an initiation center for priests and priestesses. Megalithic age remains dating from 5,000 years before Christ show that Glastonbury was a site of a massive astrological calendar, combining a stone circle with solar and lunar alignments, and an hand-carved zodiac map. Druid priests and society considered Glastonbury their holy Mecca. There were temples, stone circles, and fertility sites. So we can see that Glastonbury is a central sacred site for the Druid tradition and the Celtic tradition. And it was that it existed even before the Romans arrived and introduced Christianity to Britain. King Charles' claim or charter for Newfoundland talks about the first Christian church in Britain, and in reality there is evidence, documentation of a primitive, let's say, church. That is not a classical stone church as we know them, but a church built of wood, which can be dated to around the time of Christ, at the beginning of just around 50 Anno Domini, or CE, as they say in modern historical terminology. Now we begin to see a sort of conflict developing here, because the Roman invaders, and also the Christian religious invasion, because it didn't exist previously in Britain, have constructed and maintained a church on a pre-existing non-Christian sacred site. Later on, much later on, around 1400 or 1500 CE, at the time of Christopher Columbus, for example, again, Christian scholars began to say that the Holy Grail was located in Glastonbury, exactly in Glastonbury. The story here is that Joseph of Arimathea had taken the Holy Grail, the cup from which Jesus had drunk at the time of the Last Supper, and had carried this from Jerusalem to Glastonbury, where it still remains. This is a somewhat strange coincidence, because the Grail is a central part also of the legend, the story, the history of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, and therefore it is a symbol of the Celtic tradition. Many visitors come to Glastonbury every year, and it's possible to visit a site called the Chalice Well. In Italian that would be il pozzo del calice. This Chalice Well is reportedly a site where the Grail is buried underneath the well, deep under the ground. I don't know the statistics of the visitors, but since the name of Avalon and presumably the legend of King Arthur and the Holy Grail have been maintained over the centuries in Newfoundland, then presumably whoever visits the Chalice Well in Glastonbury can decide for themselves whether the Grail which is buried there is the Celtic traditional Grail or the Catholic religious Grail. As far as I'm concerned, I know which version I prefer. Now, officially, for purposes of this lesson, time has run out for this evening, but I would like, I don't know if I will be cut off, but I would like to steal a few moments for a very special reason. I said in this program, and I repeat, that I was born approximately 50 kilometers from Glastonbury and brought up. I visited many times with my parents, with my family, but I never really understood the true significance of Glastonbury. Until I came to Italy, and I was in Italy, and until I met a very special person. That very special person was Giancarlo Barbadoro, who was well informed on the Druid tradition and the importance of Glastonbury. I don't know if Giancarlo Barbadoro ever visited Newfoundland, but I believe he did visit Glastonbury. My contact with Giancarlo over a long period of years allowed me to reassess my knowledge and my beliefs about Glastonbury and about my own spirituality and my own existence in this universe. I mention this today because we have recently celebrated his what would have been his birthday. Happy birthday, Giancarlo. Thank you very much for everything you have given me. I believe that I am a better person and the world is a better place for the fact that you spent your time on this planet. I hope all my listeners will hear this special message from me, but that's all from me for this evening. Nick Youldon is signing off. Tune in again next week to Radio Dreamland, English Planet, for another lesson in English. And remember, in the meantime, share the vision. Good night.